Alright, hi everybody. I did a studio tour video a couple months ago, and I kind of glossed over this table in a really basic way. Didn't really talk about the modular as much, just I said, here's the modular, and it does modular stuff. And I got a couple of comments asking me to try to walk through it a little more specifically, what modules I have, what they do, and so I'm going to try and do that today. I am by no means an expert on any of these modules. You can go to Loopop or others for some really in-depth demos, but I'll tell you what I use them for and what I found useful about them, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to move in here and we'll take a look at them kind of left to right, top to bottom here. So we got Ornament and Crime. I typically use this for quantizing, at least that's what I've done most recently. Running marbles through it and then kind of quantizing marbles is what I've done with it the most. But it does, it has a whole bunch of different apps that do different things. I've just barely scratched the surface of what Ornament and Crime can do. I need to spend more time with it, honestly. Maths, classic maths, can't leave home without it, mostly for envelope generation, but it does so many other things. Again, Loopop has a great video walking through like the 20 different things it can do, probably more if you really put your mind to it, but I typically use it for, pretty basic envelope generation and modulation especially. You could spend hours just explaining what maths does. Quad VCA, typically using it in concert with the IntelliGel Dual ADSR here. Haven't used it in too many interesting ways, I guess, but mostly just to be able to control the oscillators and be able to play them with the key step, so running oscillator through the VCA and then controlling the VCA with an envelope, which is pretty straightforward. I know there's a lot of other interesting things you can do with it, but that's typically what I'm using it for. And it's nice to have 4 of them in one module, small footprint, and you get 4 VCAs to be able to use in different ways, which such a small system is kind of more than I would almost ever need. The Doepfer A138 stereo mixer, this is basically hard patched right now, kind of the way that I like it, but this, is in basically every patch. So we got 4 channels and control over pan. You can't automate any of that, which is a little bit of a bummer. It'd be nice to be able to automate panning, do some cool stuff in the stereo spectrum, but at the very least, it's nice to be able to, sum 4 channels and then send them out, which right now they're going to clouds, and I'll explain that here in just a second. Tides, I got mostly because I planned on using it as a LFO, like that was going to be my main LFO, but I found myself using it as an actual oscillator more often than not. I've been able to get kind of a fun little ocarina or pan flute kind of a sound out of it and control it with the EWI. There's a couple of videos of me doing that, sending the EWI through the key step and then sending the key step pitch and gate out to tides, and then the dual ADSR via the VCA to be able to basically play tides with the EWI, which is pretty cool. Very cool. Like I said, I haven't really used the low frequency oscillation mode as much. I should probably dig into that a little bit more. Okay, we've got pachinko, generative sequencing, a way to generate clock and pitch and send that out in generative ways. And there's a lot of ways to dig into this, but I've used it in pretty much the way that you're supposed to use it as a generative sequencer. Rings, I really like, and I just recently found the alternate modes for rings where you get like an FM oscillator and sort of a chord mode. There's a lot of cool stuff under the hood on rings. Really only spent a lot of time using the string emulation, that particular sound is very cool and very unique, but there's a lot of other stuff going on under there. It's a lot more flexible than I gave it credit for. And then to round off the top row here, we've got U-bursts, which is clouds, and I'm sending the whole mix through this right now, you'll see, and so like everything goes through the A138S and then goes to clouds for just usually a little bit of reverb. I haven't used its granular capabilities too much, although I did use it pretty, obviously in running the radio here through it. In a recent video, but typically just for the reverb, the onboard reverb is mostly what I use it for, which is laughable for how much stuff it can do, and I'm just using it for a little kiss of reverb, but it sounds great and I really enjoy using it that way. And then bottom row here we have the quad USB power supply here on the very end. So right now I'm powering both the key step and the Roland JU06A here. Pretty cool to have power in the case for other things. You could just run everything off of the rack instead of having to bring dongles and power cords and bricks and stuff like that. Next we got Nautilus, Qubit Nautilus, very cool delay module, does a lot of stuff, has some cool like onboard effects as well with this little knob here, some like filters and distortion, does a really a lot of stuff in a very small package. Very, very cool. I've used this in almost every patch, especially for a relatively small system like this to get some really complex sounds. We talked a little bit about this already, but the IntelliGel dual envelope generator, you know, pretty straight and to the point. It's nice that it cycles, which is cool, so it kind of functions like a more complex LFO if I want it to. Typically, like I said, using this in conjunction with the quad VCA to be able to control, like literally control the oscillators via the EWI, or even just the key step. And then next we got the buffered mult here from 2HP. This is actually my most recent module. Haven't spent a lot of time doing anything with it, but it seems very useful to have, be able to send signals in different places on such a small system. To be able to split that and send it different places is very useful. Next we got Popple stereo filter, pretty straightforward. This is from Afterlater Audio. Also, I didn't mention this, but all of my these four Mutable Instruments clones are all from Afterlater Audio as well. Big fan of their modules, located here in Seattle, near where I am, near-ish where I am. Now, 4MS ensemble oscillator, very cool, very big sound. Polyphonic, but not in the way where you can, like, you know, how you'd think of playing like a keyboard, like a piano style kind of polyphonic, but it's capable of some really cool stuff with the spread of the chords and the chord qualities and stuff. There's a couple videos I've used it here recently, and it's really, really cool, and it sounds really big. And especially if you're gonna run it through the Nautilus, or even just straight through clouds, a little reverb, you can get some huge sounds out of it. Here at the end, let's see if we can actually see it. We got QPass from Make Noise. Really cool filter, very flexible multi-mode filter. Takes up a lot of real estate in the rack. I kind of got Popple because I was thinking about replacing QPass with Popple and then taking QPass out and have, you know, room for maybe 2 different modules instead of just one giant filter, but I haven't actually taken it out yet, so I've used it kind of the same way I use Popple, just like as a filter, and then I'm able to modulate it in different ways because it's got a lot of ins and outs to be able to play with, which is super cool. But again, it takes up a lot of space. Finally here, see if you can see, it's a board brain monitor, and this is like my master output module. So everything basically goes through mixer here, and then through clouds for reverb, and then out of clouds into monitor, which has 2 left and right channels, so 2 stereo inputs. So I actually have 2 that I'm not using right now because everything's coming through here, but I could, you know, send something directly into here as well, so I have another left and right to be able to send through. And then the master send out of monitor, right now I actually have it going through 2 pedals, one for each side. I have Fairfield Circuitry Shallow Water and Fjord Fuzz Loke. They're kind of like, you know, nostalgia tapey saturation delay kind of things going on. Sounds kind of interesting. I have a video of me running the system through these 2 on the left and right, which I think is kind of interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it set up this way, but it's kind of fun, gives it a little flavor. And then on the bottom here we got the Moog Subharmonicon, which is sort of polyphonic in a way. I don't know, it's hard to explain. We've got, you know, main oscillators and then sub oscillators that are you know, mapped to each other. Got an onboard sequencer, which you can send that out into the modular, which is kind of cool to be able to use a lot of these functions in the rack as well, or, you know, vice versa, send things out from here to modulate aspects of the Subharmonicon. And then one other module I have that's not racked right now, again, just kind of because of the size of it, is these the 4MS Spectral Multiband Resonator. Shout out to my friend Dave who sent me this, and I played around with it for a while. And still trying to think about how I can make this more of a part of this setup as well. It came to a point where I just had to choose, so still have it. It's really cool, it just takes up a lot of space. But anyway, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to attempt to answer them. Like I said, I'm not an expert on any of this at all, but I have slowly learning how to use this and how to make cool sounds with it. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the music I'm making with this, and stay tuned for more.